Welcome to What's the Difference podcast.
I'm Claire,
And I'm Nathan.
and I've got a really interesting story for you today that focuses on family, like a lot of stories do.
Oh, yes, as they all do. And all the good ones seem to always include
Yes.
family somewhere, don't they?
There's always complexity in family, isn't there? So we won't go off down that tangent. We'll talk
No,
about this
definitely
lady and her family. So this woman, she's called Axton, which I think is really, really nice name.
So
It's unusual, isn't it?
Well, Axton.
Axton.
Axton, okay.
Yep.
No, I know that.
I've not heard that before. And she lived a fairly normal childhood. She lived with her parents on her grandfather's farm.
Right.
And it was her mother's father, so her maternal grandfather. Her mum worked in tax. She was a tax preparer, and her dad works on the farm.
Okay.
And she describes her life now. She describes her life as, fairly normal, comfortable, happy.
Mm-hmm.
And everything shifted when her grandpa died. So she was 11 at the time.
Tend to be big changes in people's lives, isn't it? It seems to be the key for lots of things that either go right or wrong.
Yes, definitely. It's a big trigger, isn't it?
Particularly like pre-teen and that sort of stuff. Around that point of becoming a teenager is such a difficult time, but such a hard one, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's yeah. Let's not dwell on.
No. Yeah, I know it.
So Axton, when she's 11, her grandfather dies, but she's actually, as well as her being upset, of course, she's aware of how badly this has impacted her own mom.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah.
And she says that her mum took to coming straight home from work. She'd just go and sit on the couch and she'd watch the Home Shopping Network.
Oh.
And then she'd go to bed. The next day she'd go to work, she'd come home, she'd sit on the couch and watch the Home Shopping Network. And she's not, you're right. Yeah, you're right to be worried. She's not just watching it. She's ordering loads and loads of things, a lot of costume jewelry, kind of the things that pick you up and cheer you.
So dangerous, this channel.
Yeah. And even at 11, Axton is aware of this being a little bit problematic. Mm-hmm. And she's thinking, oh, that's a bit worrying, but she decides, that's just the way that she's grieving and she's distracting herself. And,
it's understandable, isn't it?
Trying to cheer herself up. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until later that she looked back on this and kind of worried about this and thinks this was perhaps something starting.
Right, okay.
A little while after this, the whole family noticed that their mail wasn't getting to them, their post.
What?
Wasn't getting to them.
Right.
So this was, back in, I'm not sure what year this was, but it was I will work that out. And it was in the times when people wrote letters to each other, to their friends, rather than...
Yeah, folks, letters, you heard of them?
I think we're talking about the 80s. Maybe early 90s.
Yeah. So that was probably a big heyday.
No, we're in the 90s.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, email hadn't it's getting there, but it wouldn't be what you'd use for general transaction, would it?
Yeah.
And that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It all came by mail, yeah.
So her and friends would write letters to each other at the time, and she noticed the letters weren't coming from her friends. And you would notice, wouldn't you, if you were writing to and from your friends. Yeah. And then her dad had a magazine that he had a subscription for, and that wasn't arriving. And then normal bills weren't arriving as well. So, the electric and the gas and whatever.
What?
So the mum and dad are thinking, what is going on here? And they think because the grandpa's died recently, perhaps somebody's trying to get hold of their mail to try and get hold of the farm. Maybe it's other family members trying to get hold of the farm. And so they're kind of thinking, oh, what are we gonna do about this? Now, remember, the mum works in tax. She's a tax preparer, so she knows all about that kind of thing. So she's like, okay, I know finance. I'm going to try and dig into this myself. Yeah. The dad at one point is getting frustrated and he's like, I'm going to go and report this to the police. Yeah. And the mom says, you can't do that. You'll mess it up. I'm working on this. So it got worse and worse, continued that the bills were going missing, and they're getting more and more in debt because they're not getting their bills, so they can't pay them. And it's just getting worse and worse.
That makes no sense.
So the way the mom described it was somebody is trying to steal our identities.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to limit our interactions with people. Now, since then, more recently, Axton has written a memoir called The Less People Know About Us to tell her story. And this was what the mum was doing. She was saying, let's make sure that people don't know what we're doing, make sure people aren't able to spy on us, and all this.
Feels like paranoia now.
Yes. And this is what this now teenager is being brought up in. So as soon as she graduated from high school, she enrolled at a university that meant her living away from home. So she went to university, and then sort of the first year you live in sort of like halls, isn't it? I can't remember what the name would be in America. So when she was going into a second year and she was going to rent an apartment for herself, she couldn't get any credit. So she asks for her credit report, which is something that I know we're all supposed to do all the time. But
no, I don't.
Yeah.
I have done, but not recently.
Yeah, I haven't done it recently. And she found out she had a really low credit score. And it looked like...
But she's a teenager. Like,
she's 19 at this point.
Right.
She's going into the second year uni. And she had all these debts in her name that she knew absolutely nothing about.
What?
She was getting letters for debts. She was getting them phoning her. She couldn't rent an apartment. She couldn't buy a car. Every time that she would tell someone that it wasn't her that was taking out all these debts, they'd say, no, that's not true. You're just a teenager trying to get out of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because I mean, irresponsible, like money spending and all those sort of things is quite...
it's the kind of thing some teenagers do.
Yes.
And she thought, well, it must be a continuation of what happened to my parents. You know, they had their identity stolen when I was a bit younger, and that seems to have carried on, and it's following me. Whether it's the same person or it's or not, she wasn't sure. But she got really interested in the science and the psychology behind identity theft as to why people do this and how they do it and get away with it.
I think you probably would, actually. I think you would, yeah.
So she actually, she was studying at university. She carried on her studies and she got a PhD, with her dissertation being on the lasting effects of child identity theft.
Well, yeah, she's got the perfect case study, isn't she?
She had been a victim, and she became an expert on this. And she's on TV and she's on radio. And she gets a special award and everything. And her parents were so proud of her. And then, so things are, seem to be going well, apart from she's still trying to work out this identity theft issue. She's got a PhD out of it, but she's still got the problems.
Yeah, of course, yeah, because the debts don't go away like that. Yeah, getting a PhD is not going to remove debts.
No, absolutely.
Probably going to increase your debts, if I'm honest, but that's a separate problem.
Disappear. Absolutely. In 2012,
right,
her mum was diagnosed with a very rare form of leukemia. So, absolutely heartbroken.
No, it's devastating.
Yeah. And she didn't live much longer than that. She died quite soon after that. And the only thing that was a little bit odd was, while she was lying in bed dying, the dad, her husband, noticed her wedding ring was missing.
Right.
So they thought that was a bit strange, but just one thing out of a million other things to worry about.
Yeah, you're not going to really worry that much at that point, are you? When you're focused on somebody dying.
Yeah, you've got other things to be thinking about.
Vastly more important thing than wedding.
So that was 2013.
Right.
And,
I've got a horrible feeling I know where the story's going.
Yeah, you might do. Axton carries on with her life as much as you can when you're grieving. But a couple of weeks later, her dad is going through the paperwork at home, and he finds a letter that's a credit card bill in Axton's name,
Right.
and it's overdue. And so he phones her and says, What are you doing? That's so unlike you. You know all the problems that we've had with credit and everything. What on earth were you doing? And she says he actually shouted at her. And she said, No way, that's not mine. It must be part of this identity theft that we know has been going on my whole life. And he said, I've got the credit card statement here in my hand. It's in the box of paperwork with your birth certificate. And she says, she describes that moment as her blood ran cold. So you can see where this might be going there. So her and her dad got together, put their heads together, and started looking through all the other paperwork. They discovered that credit card was registered to a PO box, which only her mother had access to. And they found more and more and more. All along, it had been her mother who had been racking up credit card bills and all sorts of other debts in her child's name from the age of 11.
Well, just legacy.
And it had only come out because she died, and they were able to start going through her things. So they found loads of paperwork. Some of it was in the paperwork box, some of it was in bags and handbags, in dresser drawers, just everywhere, all over the place.
Yeah.
They found out that she had also stolen her father, the grandfather's identity as well, credit card statement in his name. So they don't know how long this has been going on, really.
How much did she, take in some ways, or?
So between, I think between Axton and her father, they've got at least $500,000 in debt. Some places
I shouldn't be laughing now, but I'm like, no. Oh my word.
Some places says 6,000, 600,000, and some say 500,000. So it's a heck of a lot of money. And
have you ever? Wow, go on, sorry. Yeah.
No, absolutely. The problem was for Axton to try and get the credit card companies to believe her that this was fraud.
Yeah.
Partly because they said, well, we've had ID. We know that it's, we've had things that have confirmed this is somebody who knows all your details. So it must be you. But, well, somebody who knows all their details was her mother.
I'll see your mother here. And
then actually, this is really interesting. One of the reasons that one of them said it can't be fraud is because some payments had been made on this credit card debt at the very beginning.
Right.
And at the time, before identity theft was understood as well as it is now, partly in, thanks to Axton herself and the work that she's done, the credit card companies just assumed that if you're a scammer, if it's a fraud, you're never going to pay anything off.
Yes.
And if you've paid some off, it must be you.
Yes, got you.
But actually, we now understand that criminals will sometimes start it off looking normal, just to give them a bit more time to play with, to get a bit more trust, and then you get a bit more credit as well sometimes, don't you, as well? If you're showing that you're paying your bills, sometimes get a little bit more credit.
What did her mother spend it on, though? Because they must have known some BAM stuff, or?
A lot of it seems to be just this stuff that she was buying from the Home Shopping Channel, the costume jewellery and so on. She must have had
a warehouse with it all in.
Well, that's what Axton started digging into. Like, where else was the money going? Because it didn't add up. It didn't add up that this costume jewellery was counting for $500,000, $600,000. So she started looking into any interactions that her mother did have with people. Remember, I said, they're trying to not interact with people and trying to keep really low key.
Because then people would find a fraud.
Well, she'd even said she didn't want a funeral when she knew she was dying. It was only a year from the diagnosis to actually dying. She said she didn't want a funeral and she didn't want an obituary to be published.
Right.
She obviously didn't want people knowing and coming out of the woodwork. The only thing Axton was able to kind of find out, she got onto Facebook and found out that her mum was using her maiden name, which had been a long, long time ago, that she'd, before she was married, she was using her maiden name on Facebook. And it appeared that she had another life. It appeared that she was having a number of affairs with different people and possibly even owned property in another state that they didn't know about, as in, a home that they didn't know about. I know.
How?
Shocked silence. Shocked silence.
Wow.
The one thing that the other thing that her mother had said that she wanted when she died was to be cremated. And they did do that. They'd cremated her because, remember, this was before they knew there was all this. And she said that she wanted to stay with Axton. And her ashes now do sit on a shelf in Axton's living room.
That feels like a...
But she says now that she said in a couple of interviews that sometimes she shouts at that urn and gets quite angry.
Yeah.
Because she's realised that she didn't know her mother at all. And her dad realises that he didn't know the woman that he was married to at all. She's actually used the words psychopath.
Yeah.
About.
It feels like someone has... It's like when people have like split personality disorder or something like that. I know it's we don't call it anymore, but do you know that whole thing of where they have two complete different lives? But complete
double lives. She was working in tax and she was saying she was working on this identity theft.
Yeah.
And when Axton got awards and a PhD and went on TV for this, she was so proud of her, seemingly.
Yeah.
And just never seemed to think that she'd get caught out, of course, and until she died. And
you tell your family when you died, because you've got nothing to lose, have you? At that point, they can't come back and say anything, can you? At least write a letter of confession. This is what I've done. No,
she didn't admit to any of it. They had to find it out all themselves. The good news is that now Axton's credit is good. She was able to remove all of the fraudulent entries on credit report, but it took her 16 years. And she's an expert in this.
It's like a...
And in Illinois, where she lives, the statute of limitations on credit card debt is officially 5 years.
Yes.
And she's still getting chased for debts that are 15 or 20 years old.
Yeah.
Because they just sell them on. They sell
the
debts
well,
on,
it's the same in this country. Yeah, we do the same thing in this country.
Yeah. It's just awful. So she's written a book now, which I'd absolutely love to read in full. I've really enjoyed reading some of these interviews. She's an absolute inspiration, this woman, that she's taken that negative experience and turned it into her life's work so that she can help other people, which is absolutely amazing.
This goes back to, we've got other stories coming. We've had other stories already where the amount of people, it's like, in what world did you think that was going to be?
Yeah, that it was going to be okay in the end. How I guess they're not thinking.
Or maybe it's, it's not just that. You talk about this, like, is it like a form of mental health? Because you'd think you're rationalizing, your mind, you're rationalizing your own mind that this is a correct way of living and a correct way of dealing with people. Or
I guess they just think they'll be able to keep lying to get out of it.
Yeah, that's true. We've spoken about it before. It's like what's he called? massive Ponzi scheme. It's like Bernie Madoff.
Madoff, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Madoff's story. It's that
Yeah,
same
just
thing. He just kept
lie
going,
upon lie.
and eventually he started to believe it. And eventually he always believed he could get out of it. And he always believed that he would get the money back and then he'd be okay.
Yeah, it'd be okay, and he would pay
It'd be
them
okay.
off.
It'd be okay, and it
fine.
wouldn't. But it never was it? Because once you get, as I think there's other stories coming in this series, but I think a lot of them go around this whole thing of ego and greed and just this whole thought process of thinking that actually, what I'm doing is right and this will come out okay.
Yeah, I had a friend who was seeing a person it was very, very messy.
Mm-hmm.
He was living with who he said was his ex-girlfriend, and that they were in the middle of her moving out. Mm-hmm. And he told her one weekend, "Don't contact me this weekend because we're getting her stuff out of the house and we're actually moving her out. So just don't contact him. Don't contact him." So me and her, it was a lovely summer weekend. So me and her went to a beer garden on the Saturday or Sunday afternoon, kind of, take a mind off things and
absolutely,
a drink and a chat. While we were there, bumped into kind of an acquaintance of this guy who said, "Oh yeah, he's in Amsterdam with his girlfriend this weekend, isn't he?"
Oh,
and he was.
Oh,
and how on earth was he going to get out of that? He was still completely with this woman, living with her, wasn't moving her out weekend. And other people who sort of knew him.
Well, he was moving out. He just moved out for the briefly to go to Amsterdam.
Just the weekend.
I mean,
Went
come on.
Amsterdam.
There was an element of truth there. I mean, the rest of it not. But
and he would have had to add layer upon layer of lies. And as it happened, he just sort of begged forgiveness and said, "Yeah, it is going to happen." They're actually married now.
Oh, I mean, anyway, you know what? Oh, but yeah. I think it goes back to we said before, buyer beware.
Yes, absolutely.
No matter what the contract
knew
is.
what he was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just a fairly, seemingly normal person, and he just lie upon lie. So people do this. But just how do you think you're going to get out of it? Absolutely bizarre.
I think it's almost, sometimes, but it's like the thing with some of the ones we've had before, and actually there's a good one coming up soon, where the person that was involved with it was saying, well, initially it seemed a small thing, but then once you get into the thing, that wherever it is, whether it's the fraud, whether it's the lying, whether it's the fraud is lying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, well, it'll be all right. I can just do this bit and then it'll be fine. But then you get that. That gets you deeper and deeper. It's like you are digging a hole.
Digging a hole. Yeah, absolutely.
And eventually you realise that you're at the bottom of a huge, massive crater and there is no way out.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to give up and try and climb out. But at which point most people don't know, just keep going.
Just keep going.
Pull it in behind me, The hole wasn't there.
It makes you think, if she hadn't died quite quickly like that, would they have ever, or if she'd managed to destroy all the paperwork before she died, would they have ever found out? So another nice family story.
Claire, that was stupendous. At first I was trying to figure out where that was going, and then I'm thinking, oh no, it can't be. I think partway through I was thinking, is it the mother? No, it can't be the mother. You wouldn't do that. As you got to the end of it, I'm thinking, oh no, it's going to be.
That's what you hope, isn't it? You would hope.
You don't know. Yeah. But wow. Wow. And I think that just again sums up to me is exactly this is why we're doing this, isn't it? Because those stories
we're fascinated by people, aren't we? And fascinated by those little decisions they make or the things that they find out.
Why would you do that? It's like in your right mind. It's because at some point you must have gone, you know what, the best thing I can do for my family and for my family's well-being is go on light and start a second life. Or have you always had a second life and then nobody ever knew?
Maybe they
one life's complicated enough, thank you very much.
Exactly. I know one life's enough to juggle. Imagine having two lives to juggle. No, thank you.
No, absolutely not. Wow. Well, Claire, thank you very much. That was fascinating. That really, really was.
Oh, I hope everyone's enjoyed listening to that.
No, we really hope so as well. And I think what we really like if people would please, if you can, like and subscribe. Give us feedback as well if you things that you think we could do, or even a story. If you found a story that you think you could tell us about that we could talk about, we'd happily include that as well. And where can they find us again, Claire? Remind me.
So we've got a LinkedIn, and we've got a Twitter, and we've got a Gmail. If you want to drop us a line, we are on what's the difference? The podcast at gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Please do wherever you find you. I can't stop asking people, please, wherever you find your podcast, please subscribe.
Yeah,
and it really does make a big difference.
And yet again, Nathan has interrupted Claire at the end.
It's because I don't know what I'm going to say and I just blurt it out.
No, it's good. I mean, it's becoming like a running joke.
It's that thing.
Well, in that case, goodbye from me.
And bye from me. Bye.
Yeah, bye.